From Canada, Citizens Forum, where we look at the important issues of the day through a lens of democracy and media and try to figure out, how do we build a better country for ourselves? Hello and welcome to From Canada Citizens Forum. It is Saturday, May the 17th, 2025. My name is Jack Etkin. I'm here with Mehdi Najari and Norm Ryder. This is a show with a Canadian perspective on what's going on here in Canada and around the world. The first thing I want to talk about is Alberta separation, that story that's kind of just come up. And I want to say that, you know, in a very general sense, truth matters and facts matter. And if Alberta is being badly treated by Canada, then they certainly have something to be concerned about, and the rest of us too. But let's look at the truth and the facts. I mean, this story, to me, sort of came out of nowhere right after the election. Suddenly, Alberta's separation, reared its head. And I think big business is behind this idea, the corporations who run Canada. And why do they want Alberta separation? Well, they don't necessarily want Alberta separation, but they want another divisive issue to come into play, so we won't be watching the corporations and the 0.01% as they continue to destroy our country and steal everything that isn't locked down. I mean, I think that's what's really going on. So if we look at the story of Alberta separation, the two big issues seem to be oil, and they're a bit angry about that, and equalization. So, and here's part of that story. This is a little bit about equalization. What exactly are Alberta separatists mad about? This is from, I think, CBC. The equalization payment plan that we're now working under was put in place by Stephen Harper some years ago. So he wasn't an enemy of Alberta, but that doesn't mean it's good. But what we need is information and facts and figures so we can make a decision about, does equalization work for Alberta, or are they being badly treated? I think one of the reasons Albertans are upset about equalization is that they're told over and over again by the media, which is owned by big business and does not necessarily work for the people of Alberta or for the people of Canada. Remember, the media is owned by big business, and I include CBC in that. So here's a story about what's going on, and this quotes a gentleman by the name of Bratt, B-R-A-T-T, Dwayne Bratt, a political scientist at Mount Royal University in Calgary, says some of the anger around equalization comes from a misunderstanding among many Albertans of how the system works. Now, just because he says that doesn't mean it's correct, but he does say, and this is a guy who has some expertise, unlike the rest of us, because I've looked at this a little bit, and it's a complex issue. But what he says is, if Alberta seceded, they would save tax revenue, but then they would have to pay for all the things that the federal government currently pays for. And that would become very complicated about whether they would benefit or not. So here's a guy with a bit of expertise who's saying that, in terms of the equalization, maybe it's not that big a problem for Albertans, but they're always told it's a problem by the people who want to create the issue of Alberta separation, because it's a divisive issue and it keeps us focused where they want us to be focusing. Now, the other issue is oil, and I just want to touch on that for a second as well. Here. Another record year for Canadian crude oil. This is from StatsCan. And what it says is, it was an eventful year for the Canadian crude oil sector, a year marked by the opening of a new major pipeline, improved production efficiencies, and continued growth in demand. For the fourth consecutive year, production of crude oil reached a record high, and equivalent products reached. So for 4 years in a row, we've set records in Canada for the amount of oil we produced. And yet the people of Alberta are being told that they're being screwed by the government of Canada. Now, maybe they are. I'm not saying they're not. I'm not saying this story is correct, but at least let's have access to correct facts and figures before we allow the media and some politicians to make us crazy the way they always seem to want to do. So that's that. And Norm, on to you.
Yes, actually, I've got a couple of topics related to our whole political system, I guess you could say. That the first is, I'll just do a share screen here about, apparently it's been in the works for a while, but first I heard about it was this week. And this is a BC government or politician, Democratic and Electoral Reform Committee seeking input. Well, this is a committee that's going to hold hearings around the province on electoral reform and democratic engagement, which are two issues. Now, I've got a little bit of a problem with the whole thing, that the idea is good, except it's being run by the MLAs. It should be something such as a citizens' assembly. But if people want more information, I'll just scroll down here a bit. Well, first of all, these web links don't work. You go nowhere with it. You have to enter them manually into your browser. But you can contact, well, this is members of the committee that I see. My MLA is part of it. And you just go to this email address. It does work. And presumably get more information. Or if you want to, they do mention you can participate either in with a presentation to their committee when they're going around the province, or you can also do a written submission to them. So it's shall we say, it sounds good. I just hope something comes out of it, because we definitely do need quite a change in our whole electoral system.
Yes.
Yeah, well, yeah, I knew you'd agree with that. We see what the proper reform is different, but that's part of what the reason for our whole discussion is. And as I say, my big concern is that the report will be driven by the politicians, and you can be sure they're going to write it in a way that gives them more power and more control, and that's going in the wrong direction.
Mehdi, any comment?
About the electoral reform?
Yeah. It's electoral reform and democratic engagement, so it's broader than just electoral reform.
I don't think, I believe that all these parties, maybe not Greens, but all the rest of them, NDP, Liberal, Conservative, all of them are controlled by big business. And the big business want majority government, because then they can push their agenda through. Every time we have a minority government, there are some good things is done for the people of Canada. But as soon as we get majority, everything is done for the interest of corporations. So NDP had the chance to change it, and they didn't want to change it. So they created a process in 2018 that was not workable. And so it didn't work. And now we are seeing the same thing. Just consider, for people outside Canada or in Canada, consider a party with 44% of the vote form the majority government and run the country like a dictatorship for 4 years. And that's 57% of the population that didn't vote for that party has no say. and their representative in parliament cannot do much.
Yeah.
This is dictatorship. This is not a democratic process.
Yeah. Those who did vote for the party also have no say. None of us have any say. Yeah.
Exactly. But clearly 50, 56, 57% of population in 4 years have no say. And the 44% get the majority and do whatever they want. That is not democratic society, democratic process.
Norm, any last comment on this?
Well, I was just going to say, actually, I agree with Mehdi's comments, but this is just the provincial, which we haven't got to the electoral reform at the federal level, which needs it every bit as bad. But as I say, it comes back to my big concern is that with the politicians running it, which are, I guess, proxies for big business, but that's beside the point, we're not going to get electoral reform as long as they get to make the decision.
Yes, I agree. Mehdi, you wanted to talk about, start off talking about Ukraine.
Yeah, I thought maybe this time I talk about the international scene. In terms of Ukraine, Vladimir Putin suggested face-to-face meeting with Ukraine. He didn't say, I will be there. He said face-to-face meeting of our representative. And they sent a high-level representative to Turkey to talk to Ukrainian. But the way the media portrayed, this was the same group of people Russia sent for peace talk, the same composition of people than they sent in March of 2022. So it was the highest level that they could send. But the media here, along with security services like MI6 representative, they portrayed as if the Russian did send a low level, they really don't want peace, and they really are not serious. This is propaganda. And Vladimir, Mr. Zelensky go to Turkey and say, I am here to face Putin, and it's all show. It has nothing to do with reality. We have to remember that Vladimir Zelensky was voted in 2019 to become the president of Ukraine based on his promise of bringing peace to Donbass, the eastern part of the Ukraine, the Russian-speaking, that the Ukrainian military and the neo-Nazi militia were attacking and killing people. Between 2014 to 2022, more than 14,000 Ukrainian Russian-speaking civilians were killed in eastern Ukraine with the help of Western states in Europe and Canada and United States. They were helping the neo-Nazis. For example, Canadian military were training neo-Nazis since 2015 to fight Russian. Why? Why Canadian military go to Ukraine to train neo-Nazi Azov battalion and other neo-Nazi group? We never get an answer to that. I will send the Ottawa Citizens article on this from 2015 to 2022, that this is a fact, that Canadian government, the military were helping. And then, who is Vladimir Zelensky? He was from the Russian-speaking part of Ukraine, and he said that he is going to stop the war, stop the bloodshed, and bring the country together. And no provocation by Western country doesn't allow them to come to Ukraine to provoke Russia. He was an actor. He was being paid by a tycoon called Ihor Kolomoisky, a tycoon that was wanted by United States for corruption, but that thing was just a show. The United States playing a game. That tycoon was helping United States in many instances. So when Vladimir Zelensky got elected, it's because to create peace. But as soon as he get elected, he banned Russian Russian language. He banned the Russian churches, and he increased his support for the neo-Nazis and the war in eastern Ukraine. This is a comedian that one of his act was to play nude piano with his private part. This is not a politician. This is a puppet that they put there so they can control and tell him what to do, and he does it. He's not a politician. He lied. And now his term is over, but he's still the president. His term is over. We need a new election. Let people of Ukraine decide. But no. We have our puppet in place, and we are going to keep him, and we are going to portray him as representing people of Ukraine. This is about Ukraine. And another place that I like to talk about is Syria. In Syria, we had suddenly ISIS show up in 2013, the bloodsuckers and Al-Qaeda in Syria to depose the Bashar al-Assad government. The Bashar al-Assad government that a few years before the American officials were wining and dining with them, tried to bring Bashar al-Assad to their sphere of influence. And because Bashar al-Assad refused to be a puppet, they created the war in Ukraine, in Syria. And Mr. Giuliani, that now he's the president and nobody elected him, he was head of one of these Muslim terrorist gang that created by CIA, Mossad, and MI6. I like to remind people that there was no such a thing as Muslim terrorists before 1970s. This is a creation of the West with the help of corrupt, brutal Arab rulers, like the rulers of Saudi Arabia and rulers of Qatar and United Arab Emirates. They financed to create these groups, the so-called Muslim terrorists and Muslim radicals. If anybody wants, you can do a library search and look that there was no such a thing as Muslim terrorists before 1970s. If it was Muslim terrorists and is the religion that create these brutes and these killers, then it should have been for 1400 years. We should have seen many examples of it. But if it's created, and I can tell you when they created it, with the Taliban in Afghanistan, when the Brzezinski going to Afghanistan saying, go here, these are mujahideen, the Muslim fighters, go and get your country back. If you remember, there was and
Brzezinski was I don't know who he was in the U.S. government.
He was the national security for Mr. Carter at that time.
Right. So they funded these terrorist groups and told them, "We're with you."
Exactly. And then it's because then they brought them to Iraq and used them for pushing their agenda. And then in 2013, it was the Syria. Suddenly, this group of so-called killers and terrorists that they gathered from villages in Muslim country, with many of them uneducated, and give them money, train them in Turkey and other American bases in the region, in Qatar and other places, and then brought them to Syria. If you remember, they prayed themselves in Syria with the new Toyota trucks, if you remember. And nobody asked, 150 Toyota trucks, new. Where did they get them? How did they get there? But this is all American creation. And now the person, the groups that chop the head of American, for example, let me mention few names. One of them was American journalist James Foley. Another one was American-Israeli Stephen Joel Sotoloff. Another one was Peter Kassing, Major Peter Kassing, and Kyla Jean Muller, along with many, many other people from British British people like David Haynes or Alan Henning and many others from Japan, from China, from many other places. They beheaded them. Now the head of those working with this suddenly they change him. And they had a $10 million on his head after he took over and Bashar al-Assad government collapsed. He suddenly become wonderful. They go shake their hand. Mr. Trump just last week was shaking his hand, and praising him. And this is what we get. Meanwhile, Israel come, when the regime collapsed, Israel come in and captured many areas of Syria. No problem. The Arab countries, these corrupt rulers that have been watching for more than 18, 19 months, the genocide in Gaza, they do nothing. In fact, they are helping Israel to commit this genocide. And when the regime collapsed in Syria, we see Israel come and capture huge area of Syria, no problem.
Mehdi, can I ask you one question about Gaza?
Yes.
Can supplies and food be moved in from the Egyptian border? Is that open or is that closed?
No, the border is closed by Israel, but one thing people have to realize, we all the time talk about Western country helping Israel to commit this genocide. But without the help of corrupt Muslim and Arab rulers, Israel could not do what they have done in last 19 months. Yeah. For example, the oil from Azerbaijan go through Turkey, and in Turkey, it's put on the tankers, tankers, and moved to the port of Ashdod in Israel. Who owns those tankers? The son of the president of the Turkey, This president of Turkey every day say, oh, we are going to do something about Israel. Oh, we are going to get involved and fight Israel. It's all not lies. Yeah. In terms of other goods, since Houthis of Yemen shooting at the ship that go to Israel through to Red Sea, so now in last year or so, the ship go to United Arab Emirates. They put the stuff, the supplies for Israel on trucks, go through Saudi Arabia and Jordan and go to Israel. So without the help of these corrupt Arab countries, the genocide and killing of tens of thousands, women and children, defenseless people, was not possible. And since March 2nd, we have no food for people in Gaza. We are starving children. This is not 1942 or 43. This is now. And we are all witnessing it. And we are doing nothing. Shame on us to allow this to happen.
Yeah. It's mass murder before everybody's eyes and goes on and on and on. It's unbelievable, except that it's happening. Thank you. Norm, do you want to do your second topic?
Yeah. I'll just bring up a share screen again on this one. That it's the oath of allegiance that our MPs and actually our MLAs take a very similar one. Now, this is coming out of the 1905, and they are swearing oath of allegiance to
the wrong one is up, but we can fix that up later.
Well, okay. Well, we'll just go to. Let's see. Okay, this one. Yeah, this is really the one I wanted to bring up. But this is the current one, and if you notice, they swear an oath that they will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty, in this case, Queen Elizabeth, but that's allowed to change as the monarch changes. And the affirm is the same thing, except they affirm and they don't, so help me God. But I find very interesting in here, there is no recognition of the Canadian Constitution, which is just a side note that Trump took an oath that he would uphold the American Constitution. Well, I think all our MPs, Prime Minister, etc., should take the same oath that they uphold the Constitution, and they should also take an oath for the people of Canada. And that's not done. It's done in a very private ceremony, and no one really knows for sure what all is going on. That in the States, they are better. It's a public ceremony. And it's time that we got away from this oath of allegiance to the monarch of Great Britain. As a matter of fact, one of the other pages that it can bring up would be a whole topic in its own right. Canada really, according to our amended British North America Act, amended in 1893 and reconfirmed when the Constitution was repatriated, the monarch of Great Britain has nothing to do with Canada. Now, I know that we all know how the government runs. When King Charles was crowned, all the MLA or MPs rushed to Ottawa to reaffirm that their submission to the king of a foreign country. And no one really asked about that, is why are they doing that? According to our Constitution, the monarch of Great Britain has nothing to do with Canada. We are technically, if you go back and look at it, should consider ourselves a republic. Now, there's not going to be a savings in money there. We're still going to have somebody, whether we call him the President of Canada or the Governor General of Canada. We're still going to have those offices. Every country seems to have two at the top, one elected and one appointed. So it won't change a lot of things, but it does change that our MPs and MLAs, well, you heard the cabinet ministers one time being sworn into BC, none of them take an oath to protect the people of BC, to do anything for them. It's all for the monarch. And it's time we changed that, or at least had a public conversation that we're going to change about changing it.
Yes. And I've noticed over the years that the media will never play the oath of allegiance that all of our elected representatives take, because they don't want us to ever hear it. I've never heard it my whole life, except once by accident when I happened to be at Government House, which is a beautiful park here in Victoria, on the day the BC government was being put in place, a newly elected BC government. And I was outside, and they happened to be playing the loudspeaker so that people outside could hear. And I was absolutely shocked at the oath of allegiance everybody was taking to the royal family. What about us? Like, we're totally irrelevant.
Jack, I was going to say one thing I found when I was looking at this, very interesting, that the MLAs in BC take an oath of allegiance to the royal family and the rest of that. The oath of allegiance for the civil servants in BC is to the people of BC. There's nothing about the monarch, which that's a strange thing.
And then they betray us every day as well.
Well, that's a whole different discussion. But
Mehdi, any comment?
Been considered.
Mehdi, any comment about that?
I don't think it makes that much difference. Although it is important that we are not a colony, so to have the oath of allegiance to a foreign authorities. But I don't think it makes that much difference. But one thing that makes the difference, to change the electoral system, that we have more views of the people reflected in their parliament or in the house or legislature, and so on and so forth. Right now, it's just a game between these two sets of stooges, or three sets of stooges of the big business and big money.
Okay. I want to make a comment about, I guess, what I'm calling the new Canada. Because of the tariffs, ever since the tariffs, President Trump announced these tariffs, the immediate reaction of it seems every government in Canada was, Well, because of these tariffs, it has to be full speed ahead on completely destroying the planet for corporate profit. That was the reaction of our federal and it seems all provincial politicians from day one. And the message here in BC, and I'm sure it's the same everywhere else, is suddenly we need more oil, we need more fracking and LNG, we need more mining, we need more spending more on the military and on war. And we, the Canadian people, were never asked. We're just told because of the tariffs, this is the new direction we have to go in. And here in BC, they tell us we don't really have time anymore for environmental assessments or anything like that. We just don't have time. And in Ontario and four other provinces are now moving ahead with nuclear reactors. In Ontario, they're already starting pre-construction of the first one. And it's, I think, $20 billion, no doubt will be doubled or tripled to $50 or $60 billion by the time it's built. And these things are dangerous. They're not only dangerous because the nuclear radiation is dangerous for tens of thousands of years, some of it, but it's dangerous to live near them. And it's dangerous that the mining that's done to fuel them, it's danger everywhere. So I completely believe in the issue of climate change. But now our rulers are saying, well, we're going to solve climate change. We're going to put in nuclear reactors. I'd rather have the climate change because nuclear radiation is poisonous to a level that is unfathomable. It will sterilize the planet if we allow it to. So we're moving in crazy directions. And we, the people of Canada, aren't even asked. They just tell us that we don't have time anymore. And if we buy into it and we believe it, then our planet will continue to be destroyed for corporate profit.
Well, Jack, I was going to say one thing in particular you brought up about the pipelines. I was looking at a report today that the Trans Mountain pipeline that they built to triple the capacity of it, it's only 1/3 used now. So why the big reason to put the pipeline in? Apparently they're not needed. Now, part of the reason is that the Alberta crude oil is a very difficult one, requires special refineries to refine. For the most part, the only ones that do that are in the States. There are few worldwide, and that's where we're exporting a lot of the oil to. But you get one story, but then when you sit back and look at the reality of what it is, well, frankly, I don't think it's going to be years before they, even with the way they're doing things, they will be able to use the full capacity of the Trans Mountain pipeline.
Yeah.
And on the nuclear, the ones that they're putting in are nuclear plants that apparently can be transported by truck, which just tells me that they very much lowered the safety standards of building them to do that. That concerns me greatly, and I sure hope they don't have any scheduled for BC, which I'm sure that's part of whatever the script is, that they're going to be doing that in a few years here too.
Saskatchewan and Manitoba are two of the provinces. I don't remember the fourth. So it's Ontario, Saskatchewan, and Ontario, Saskatchewan, and Alberta are the three, and one in the Maritimes.
Yeah.
Mehdi, do you have any last comment
on this issue?
On this issue or any other?
If I can just go back to what I was telling about Syria, because I didn't finish it. So they started in 1970s, and there was a conference in Jerusalem, the Jerusalem Conference on International Terrorism in July of 1979, that started all these, most of these so-called Muslim terrorist activity. And Mr. Julani, or al-Sharar, that now he is the so-called president of Syria, that nobody elected him. If we remember, during the war in Syria, when the Al-Qaeda and ISIS fighters were getting injured, they would go to Israel. Israel set up a field hospital for them, and they would fix them in the Israeli hospital. And also there was a picture of Mr. Netanyahu talking to one of these so-called Muslim terrorists that they were fixing to go back to fight for them. And now Mr. Giuliani, the president, also sending emissaries to Israel to have a nice relationship with Israel. So the whole war in Syria was about Israel control of Syria and the region, American control of the region, and they have succeeded to do that.
Yeah. Norm, any last comment?
I'll just comment on what Mehdi said there, that I sit back and I almost look at it all as just theater and a movie, because their main scheme seems to be, I don't care which conflict you want to talk about, whether it's what's going on in Canada with Alberta, which there's big problems there if they try and separate, is to keep us all divided and fighting with each other. Because if we're fighting with each other, it's easier for the powers that be to control us and get away with it. And as long as we're looking at these, shall we say, little problems, like what's going on in Syria, little problem, and worrying about those, we're not looking at the real big cause of what's driving the conflicts worldwide.
I would agree. That's maybe a very good place to end it. Thank you, Norm and Mehdi. And thanks everybody for watching today's show of From Canada Citizens Forum.